Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Very Best Podcast, an interview show focused on our personal connections to the Pokemon franchise and what it means to us. With me today is a gaming editor at comicbook.com and co-host of Chapter Select, Battle Legend, Logan Moore. Welcome to the show, Logan.
Hey, Jerrad. Good to do another podcast with you. It's been, I was trying to think like before we started this, how long it has been since we have recorded together. And I feel like it's maybe like pre-COVID even, like 2018 or 19. It feels like it's been a long time.
No, it can't be that long. Now after we record, I think I might go and look back because last time I recorded with Max was on the Max Frequency podcast for I think the Xbox Showcase in 2024. And I imagine we must have recorded something. I don't know. It's been a long time. We talk all the time, but in terms of podcasting, yes. Yeah, it's been forever. With the at the beginning of the show, I like to give everyone a trainer class. I don't remember what I gave Max last week. I think it was Pokemon Channeler because his favorite Pokemon's Gengar. And with you, I was like, oh, I could do something plant-based because we talked about it and you said your favorite Pokemon, at least one of them, is Bulbasaur. And then I remember the story Max told me of, if you guys want to listen to the first episode of this podcast, Max talked about they have a podcast together called Chapter Select, and they did a Pokemon series, and in that they did a battle series where they went against each other in every game. And he talked about, I think it was in the core memory segment of this show. He said that you beat him so bad for like the first couple of games that it like put him onto his villain arc of learning how to like min max and do IV EV training and all of this stuff, and it was really funny to listen to. And I was like, man, I know how competitive you are in other stuff, like we do fantasy sports together. So it was just so funny to me to hear that from Max. And so I figured out Battle Legend seems appropriate since Logan kind of sparked this obsession for Max in terms of building a perfect team.
Yeah, I knew he had turned a corner when we started. I can't remember which games it was in, but the first Pokemon he sent out, he immediately used Trick Room. And I was like, oh no.
Oh, wow.
He has discovered some strats here that I was not anticipating. So yeah, that was a really fun series. I think all of those are up on YouTube. Our series, I don't know if he mentioned this. I think we did 10 different battles or something like that, and I think we ended up going 5-5. And I won the first 4, I think, and he ended up coming back and even in the series. So we have talked about needing to do one final battle, which we have still not done yet, and creating teams that are comprised of Pokemon from our various teams that we had fought with before. But in order to do that, we'd have to do an enormous migration of Pokemon from all the old DS, 3DS games, and bring those over to Switch and then do a fight there. I think once Pokemon, is it Champions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think once Champions comes out, that's what's going to prompt us to actually do this big migration and have one final battle for all the marbles to see who wins this elongated series that we've now had.
He mentioned this specific plan of the Great Migration, bringing everything over, and then fighting in Pokemon Champions as the finale to the series, which sounds pretty cool. I just couldn't get over, like I said before, I know how competitive you are, so I can imagine him getting just destroyed and being like, I can't let this go on. I'm just gonna learn. I'm gonna get in the books. I'm gonna study the craft. I'm gonna study the blade. I'm gonna come out swinging. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, my thing was, for me though, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit today, but like for me, Pokemon is always just about like, I want the coolest looking Pokemon more than anything. Like there were some battles that we had where I'm like, I know this team I have is atrocious, but these are all of the coolest looking Pokemon in this generation, in my opinion, and I'm just going to fight with them for the heck of it. So I'm very competitive, but there's something aesthetically about Pokemon as well that I want to have a cool team more than I want to have an unbeatable team. So
The fashion souls for Pokemon. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. We talked about this as well. For me, I think a lot of times people fall in the category of like battler or collector, and I don't think that only goes towards the video games. It goes towards like the trading card game and a lot of other aspects. And for me, I'm more on the collector side. Like I like collecting the Pokemon. To your point, having a team that I like as opposed to the one that's the most meta. And I know some other people are like, I need to go in there. I need to breed the perfect version of this Pokemon. I need to EV, IV train. get the perfect move set, and I'm like, that's a little too much for me. I'm not that into that. So I'm surprised to hear from what Max was saying of you guys battling to now hearing you being like, I'm more about like a cool team. To hear your perspective on that. We've talked a little bit about Pokemon, but let's start with the Fast Five. This is a segment where I basically give you 5 icebreaker questions that are designed to help us get into the groove of talking more about Pokemon, even though we kind of already got into that beforehand. You do not know what these questions are. I kind of kept them secret from you, as I do with every guest. This isn't necessarily about getting the correct answer. It's just about what comes to the top of your mind. That being said, these questions, some of them do have correct answers. Some of them are opinion-based. Some of them are fact-based. So, the Fast Five, are you ready, Logan? Remember, as quick as possible.
I hope so. Let's see here. I'm worried about the correct answer ones, but we'll see.
It's perfectly fine. I'll just say incorrect, and I'll give you the right answers. Like I said, it's not necessarily about getting the right answer, but I'm just curious to see if the right answer pops up quickly. So, 5 questions. Let's begin. Name a dual-type Pokemon.
Swampert.
Cool. What is the difference between a male and female Venusaur?
It's like the markings on its forehead or something like that, right? Or like around its body? I don't know, something like that.
Wrong. The female has a larger yellow bulb on the top of its open flower. 3.
Okay.
Name a Pokemon not named Eevee that evolves with the Water Stone.
Poliwhirl.
Correct. Staryu, Shelder, Poliwhirl, Lombre, Panpour. Question number 4. What level does Machoke evolve?
It's 32, I think, right?
Trick question. It evolves via trade.
Oh, yeah.
Question number 5. Name the 8 original Kanto gym leaders.
8 original. Okay, so I'm gonna work backwards. Giovanni, Blaine. We've got Sabrina, Koga, Erica, Lieutenant Surge, Misty, and Brock. I don't know why I went
Nailed
backwards, but that works.
Nailed it. Correct. Ding, ding, ding. So I think, to be clear, I'm not throwing you out to the sea to drown here. I didn't know that Venusaur had a difference between the male and female versions of the Pokemon. I was looking up, you said your favorite Pokemon's Bulbasaur, so I was looking up like fun facts and trivia. And I know there's a lot of Pokemon that have more obvious differences, like Pyroar, the main, right, for the female and male versions of it are very noticeable. And I saw, oh, yeah, there's a difference between the male and the female Venusaur. And I was like, that's strange. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh, I doubt he'll know it because I didn't know it. So I was like, oh, all right. It is surprising, honestly, when you look at with the stones, how few Pokemon actually evolve via the main stones. Through, 9 generations now, I named 5 Pokemon, excluding Eevee, that evolve with the Water Stone, right? That's almost 1,000 Pokemon. And only 6 of them evolve with that item. Very shocking.
Yeah, I was second guessing myself when you said that. And how many of those were from Gen 1? Like, even if you do count
4.
Eevee. So then we've got Vaporeon, Poliwhirl. You said Shelder was another one. And then...
And Staryu. And the only 2 post that are Panpour and Lombre.
Yeah, that's
Ooh,
very
the pan monkeys are essentially a version of Eevee. Essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, and just Lombre who evolves into Ludicolo. Very odd. With that out of the way, we got the tough questions in there. Got tricked you with the Machoke question. I actually asked a similar question to Max on his episode, and it was for Haunter, and he also was like, I think you need to have it 32 to trade it. He got both of them combined, which I thought was really funny. Anyways, now I want to talk about your first steps. Everybody remembers their first time with Pokemon, and I wanted to learn from you because we've talked about, what we like with Pokemon. I've had several conversations with you about the franchise, but I want to know specifically, how did you learn about Pokemon growing up? Was it at school? Was it in the bus? Was it on TV? How did that happen?
I think my first memory, I had to really think about this, and I think it was the TV show. But strangely, I don't know if it was just perfect timing or if it was meant to be or what, but I'm pretty sure I watched the first episode of Pokemon airing on TV almost just by happenstance in the United States, because I knew nothing about it and I didn't see any promotional stuff for it. I was just watching cartoons one day or something like that, watching TV, and it came on and I was totally entranced by this show that I had watched, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I remember watching, they maybe played like 1 or 2 episodes in a row or something like that. And I remember like running to my mom afterwards and like telling her about it. I'm like, this is the coolest show ever. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And from there, it just devolved into me watching the show even more. And then I think my parents realized, that this was this huge cultural thing that was taking over the world at that point in time. And so then they kind of, exposed me to the fact that there's video games and there's cards. And everything kind of started to blow up there around, what would it have been, 98 maybe, 97? I forget what year it would have been. But yeah, I just remember the show first more than anything, and watching that first episode where he gets Pikachu and those ensuing episodes after that with Caterpie and all of that stuff, and that really hooked me. And it wasn't until later that I got the games and kind of got into that, which I know we'll talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that it was from the television show. Doing this podcast, I've kind of started reminiscing and trying to figure out what it was for me, and I honestly do not remember what specifically the first memory was. What I do remember is our local grocery store. When you'd walk in, it was Lowe's, it's local to the Southwest. You'd walk in, and to the right, there would be a giant magazine stand. And later on in life, it's where I would learn about Elder Scrolls Oblivion and a bunch of other video games, because they always had the Game Informer books and all the other video game related magazines. And I remember turning there and seeing the original art for Ash and the 3 starters and Pikachu. And I was so intrigued by what it was, and I opened it, and that's when I learned about the game. And I think it was then when I went home to try to find the cartoon on television that I found it. And then luckily enough, I grew up next to my best friend to this day, Daniel, who you know a little bit from our fantasy football stuff. And I was lucky enough through our entire life, I would buy one version, he would buy the other version, and so on and so forth. And speaking of the versions, you said a little bit later is when you got the game. Which game did you start with? I assume it's Gen 1, but am I wrong about that?
Yeah, it's Gen 1. So I actually looked it up here. And so the Pokemon show aired in the United States in September of 1998. And that sounds perfect because I can totally envision all of this now, is getting really into it around when school started that year and getting obsessed with it over the coming months. And then that Christmas, my parents got me a Game Boy Color because awesome. I did not own one at that point, and I got Pokemon Yellow with it. And that was my first Pokemon game, and that is what started all of it. And yeah,
starting with Yellow is awesome.
Starting with Yellow is awesome. I will say I have tough memories of starting that game though, because if you play Red or Blue, obviously, if you pick a Squirtle or a Bulbasaur, you can get through the first gym there pretty easily. Yellow's really hard, kind of like it is in the show where like Pikachu gets stomped by Onix and Geodude. Like you have to, nowadays, like I know all the strats, like, get a Nidoran that knows double kick, or go get a Mankey that knows karate chop or low kick or something like that to help you with that first gym. But like as a kid, I was like, why is my Pikachu not doing anything to this Onix? Like what is going on? And like that was a tough little hurdle there for a minute. But yeah, as soon as I cleared those like early stages of the game and realized what I was doing, and that was also a big game for me because that was around the time when I started to read as well. So like I remember my dad being hesitant to like give me that game because he knew how much talking was in it and stuff like that. But I was kind of ahead of other kids in my class when it came to like reading and stuff like that. And I think that game actually really helped me learn to read a lot better. And I eventually beat it too. I think it probably took me 6 to 8 months or something like that. But I remember I have a distinct memory. Like the following spring, we had like a show and tell or something, and I took it in my Game Boy in to show and tell, and I ended up like I think I started like an Elite Four run or something to show everybody how the game worked, and my teacher was like telling me to put the game up, and I was like, hold on, I gotta see if I can beat Lorelei here real quick or whatever. And I would have only been, I guess, like 5 years old, 4 years old, something around there. But
dropping the name Lorelei, your teacher's like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that game was the one that started it all. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other stuff too. I remember getting a lot of Pokemon cards around the time, which I know is not, the game, like the game series or anything like that. But like, I was totally invested at that point.
But it is interesting though, because everybody starts their Pokemon journey somewhere, and then you kind of decide on what you're interested in and what you're not in terms of all the arms of the franchise. And I had a friend who, not my friend Daniel, a different friend, who played the game, but they didn't find their favorite Pokemon until we started getting crazed with the Pokemon cards, and they ended up pulling I believe it was like a Beedrill. It was either Beedrill or Venomoth, I don't remember, but they ended up pulling the card, and they got super stoked, and they ended up becoming their favorite Pokemon, which was quite shocking out of all the Pokemon to choose one of them. But you know how it is. Everyone has their own Pokemon that they love for some reason, some of them cooler than others.
Yeah.
You started with yellow, so this question is a little bit different, but you get the gist. I want to know who the first non-starter you fell in love with in terms of Pokemon. Now, technically, Pikachu isn't a starter, but with Pokemon Yellow, it is your starter. So, with that caveat, who was the first non-starter you fell in love with? Was it the Pokemon you found to overcome Brock, or was it somebody else entirely?
I was really trying to think about this. Like, obviously, like a lot of other millennials or people around our age range, like I have a lot of fondness for the Kanto Pokemon and for that whole first generation. That whole Pokédex is very, it's classic, it's iconic. So I love a lot in that lineup of a Kanto. I'm gonna shout out two here though. First one I always loved for some reason, and this has stayed true through all of the different generations and all of the games that have come after. I've always loved the starter Route 1 or whatever bird Pokemon. And I was a huge fan of Pidgeot as a kid. I loved Pidgeot. I thought that it looked so cool with the like long swooping red and yellow hair coming off of its head. I just thought it looked awesome. So I was like a huge Pidgeot fan. I definitely had one of those on my first team that I really liked. And then I wanted to also, I mean, this is a few generations later, but I still remember like obsessing over trying to find out how to get a Salamence when Ruby and Sapphire were out. And when I finally got one, I thought it was like the coolest thing. And I have a lot of fond memories of trying to figure that out, reading the guidebooks and stuff like that, and like realizing that Bagons only spawn in one single part of this like off the beaten trail section of the game, and just the whole process of getting that was really satisfying. And I love all of the like pseudo legendary types. Again, I think that's pretty common. Those are like often the coolest looking ones in each of the dexes. But like Salamence was the first one that I remember seeing. I was like, this thing looks awesome. I love this. And I because I didn't have it on my first team, but I remember when I got to, the Elite Four and whoever has one like there near the end. I just remember thinking I had to restart the game at some point and figure out how to get one of those. And eventually I did. And it was great. So
out of the newer generations, can you like identify the newest Pokemon that you love? So whether it's Gen 9, Gen 8, is there, the newest one in the newest generation of somebody you fell in love with?
It's hard to say. So this is like where I'm definitely not as plugged in as other people, because I forget all of the Pokemon after about probably X and Y start to like morph together in my brain, and I can't remember the names of so many of them.
If you throw out some hints, I can help you.
I will say I liked this is kind of what I talked about with it was more about vibes and cool looks more so than typings and stuff. I thought, is it Baxcalibur in the newest game and oh my gosh,
yeah, the Ice Dragon.
Yeah, it just looks like Godzilla. It's awesome. It looks like Mecha Godzilla almost. It's really, I love that thing. It's so cool. What was also the giant whale in that one? Dondozo. I think that was another one I had on my team. I really like that. There was a few in Scarlet and Violet that I really liked. But yes, Baxcalibur I thought was one of the coolest ones from the most recent game, just because I'm a Godzilla fan and I thought it looked very similar to that. Also, I'm remembering this now too. I really like Grimmsnarl. I think when I played Sword and Shield, I named my Grimmsnarl Norman after Norman Osborn because I thought it looked like the Green Goblin almost.
Hell yeah.
So yeah.
For those who don't know, another interest Logan and I share is our love of Spider-Man. So it's really cool to hear that. I think Grimmsnarl was the Pokemon in that gen that I worked towards getting a shiny for because his shiny is white first, so he looks like an abominable snowman. So that was super sick.
Yeah, I like Grimmsnarl's like whole line there. I think it's really cool how his skin like slowly, or his hair like slowly spreads into becoming his skin and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's really cool. That's one of my favorite from that gen for sure.
I think it's fun, even if we can't spend as much time as we did with the earlier gens. I try to find a Pokemon for each generation that I really enjoy and really like.
Yeah.
The latest one for me personally was Tinkaton. The typing, I think Fairy Steel is a really cool typing. And I just like its design because I think it's really funny to have this little cutesy, adorable creature, this little pink little weirdo holding a giant warhammer. I just think it's very funny. And in battles, it's pretty competent too, which I enjoy quite a bit.
You and I are in lockstep on that. That's another one of my most recent favorites.
I have a question for you. Do you have any rules when you start a new Pokemon game? One thing I've mentioned on this podcast is that I have a personal rule that I only use Pokemon from the new generation during my playthrough. I don't bring in Gen 1 dudes or favorites from any gen. Because I want to learn the new Pokemon and find enjoyment in them and see who I like and I don't like.
I 100% do the same thing. I also like to look at the entire Pokédex beforehand and kind of plan out my team. I know a lot of people when the new games come out, they're like, I don't want to be spoiled by what's in the game. I want it all to be a surprise or whatever. It's like, no, just show me the full Pokédex. Let me see everything, see what they all look like, and, I'll go from there. Because, sometimes I'm so disappointed by what they end up evolving into that, if I was to go into a game blind and get one of the, first phase evolutions of certain Pokemons, was it Pawmot in Scarlet and Violet? I thought that whole line of evolutions was so bad. It just got slowly a little bit larger and stood up on 2 feet eventually. I thought that was terrible. But if I was playing that game blind, I probably would have got the first phase evolution of that and been like, oh, I bet this is going to evolve into something cool. And it straight up doesn't. So I always like to look at the Pokédex beforehand, try to create a pretty balanced team if I can, because at the end of the day you're going to have to fight a lot of people and make it through the game itself, so try to create some sort of balance, but more than anything just decide which ones I think are the coolest, and yes, limit it to the new designs and the new Pokemon that are actually brand new to that generation.
I think it's entirely important for the starters, especially because for the latest gen, for Gen 9, I really loved the fire starter, and then I saw what he turned into, and it was hideous. The weird sombrero egg nest thing. I didn't like it. Same thing with Quaxley. I thought his final evolution wasn't that great, so I ended up going with the grass starter, who was my Sprigatito, just because I didn't really enjoy the final evolutions for those. And to your point, it's like the Pawmot one. It's like that meme where it's like, it's the person squinting. It's like, can you notice a difference between these two images with all the evolutions? It's just so disappointing. So what's the point of even doing that?
Yeah.
Makes no damn sense. We talked about some of the memories of you playing for the first time, your first game, first Pokemon you fell in love with that wasn't a starter. But I want to know from you a core memory. It can be anything. It could be from the trading cards. It could be from the video games. It could be from the show. Just a memory that speaks out to you. Like I mentioned, with Max's episode, we ended up talking about your guys' battle series and you guys going through chapter select and playing through the games. That was his memory that he decided to talk about. So I want to know from you, what is a core memory with Pokemon that you'd like to share with us?
I have so many. Like, I wrote down about 5 here, and I won't regale you with long versions of any of these. But getting a Game Boy Color for Christmas with Pokemon Yellow. In addition to that, I got like a Charizard Pokemon card, the Charizard Pokemon card that Christmas as well, which I still have.
Sick.
So like that was like my big Pokemon Christmas, and I still distinctly remember that. Another one of my big memories is getting a Game Boy Advance SP. Finally, I hadn't owned a Game Boy Advance yet while I was on a road trip, and I bought Sapphire with it, and I just played the crap out of that game for the entire road trip and for that entire vacation I was on with my parents. Sapphire is like maybe my favorite Pokemon game, or it's the one I have like the most fond memories of, because it just hit it like the right time for me. Grant, who a friend of mine that I was talking with you about before we started recording, I went to the midnight launch for with him for X and Y when he was in college. I drove like 8 to 10 hours away just so we could get X and Y together, and we went back to his dorm and stayed in his dorm and did nothing but play that game for like 3 days. Didn't end up liking X and Y that much, but that's like still a very fond memory I have. And then the last one I'll say here too, like, I know I'm choosing way more than one, but like I remember the day Gold and Silver came out, and I really, really wanted to get it. And my dad picked me up from school that day, and a copy of Silver was like sitting in the back seat waiting for me, and I was so stoked. Like I could not believe that he went out and bought that, and he bought himself Gold because he was into that back in the day as well. He hasn't played Pokemon in a long time, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s there, him and I both had a Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Color, and we would play with one another. So that was a lot of fun.
That's sick, being able to play Pokemon with your dad. My dad was a gamer too, but he wasn't like a Pokemon gamer. He was a lot of different other video games that we played together, but what an awesome time to be able to play a Pokemon game alongside your dad. Such a cool memory.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I feel like like I said, he hasn't played video games as much. I feel like the last game he kind of got pretty into for a hot minute there was like Fallout 3. So what was that? 20 years ago almost at this point, 18 years ago maybe. But yeah, when I was younger, we used to play a lot of games together, and he was into Pokemon there for a while. He actually, I'll say this, most recently he was into TCG Pocket. He was playing that. We have made some trades with one another on TCG Pocket. So yeah.
Can you name for me real quick, as far as you can remember, each version of each gen that you got? So you got Pokemon Yellow.
Yeah. So
Did
Yellow,
you get Silver or Gold?
Yellow. And then I got Silver, and then I got Sapphire. Later picked up a copy of Emerald somewhere. I don't know how, and I still have it. And now that's like a $250 game or something insane. I got Diamond. I got White, because that was, White had Zekrom, not the other way around. I got Y. I got Moon. And then what's after Moon? Is it Sword and Shield?
Yeah.
I think I got Shield. That one wasn't one where I necessarily cared. I think I just this would have been by the time I was in like games media, I think. And I think somebody just like gave me a code to the game. I was like, oh, okay, it's Shield, whatever. So Shield on that one, and then Scarlet most recently.
Okay, so up until Moon, we got every same game except for X and Y. I got X, but other than that, me and you had the same journey with the games. Like I told you, I grew up with my friend Daniel, and he always bought the opposite one, and he always thankfully we always wanted the one the other person didn't, which worked out really well.
Yeah, and then on all the remakes, I think I got the same one that I had loved before. With Fire Red and Leaf Green, I definitely got Leaf Green though, because I was a Bulbasaur guy. So
that was a core memory. Let's get into the Elite Four. So these are questions unlike the Fast Five we did earlier in the show. You saw these questions. You were able to leave notes. I had some homework for you on a couple of these. But they're just 4 unique questions, not necessarily designed specifically for you, though one of them is, which we'll get to, which is the second question. But yeah, let's see how you answer these. First up, give me a and I want to preface this by saying Logan is somebody I know that is willing to give a hot take. So I figured this would be a good question for you. So I wanted to know, give me a Pokemon hot take that you believe wholeheartedly. Could be from any form of the franchise.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2. This is where I landed with this. This has been really bothering me over the past few years because I have seen like a groundswell of positivity for these games. And these are like maybe my least favorite Pokemon games. I think Diamond and Pearl are not good. I don't like the decks. I don't like the region. I don't like the gym leaders. I think most of the Pokemon in it are not great. It's only notable because it's the first DS Pokemon game in my mind. Like, Black and White was so much better afterwards. I don't think everything about it is terrible. There are some, like any other Pokemon game, there are some good Pokemon in it. And you know, the Cynthia boss fight at the end is good. The soundtrack's pretty good. Other than that, I think they are the most like unremarkable Pokemon games. And I think the reason that I've seen so much like positivity around them is because the generation younger than us, that's the generation of Pokemon that they grew up with. And so they have the most fond memories for that. But I'm here to tell you right now that those games are not good, especially compared to the 3 generations before it. Like, all the previous.
Oh, and then with Black and White coming out after too, it kind of got sandwiched in a bad
Yes.
place. What I will tell you too, I agree, and I had fonder memories for it, and I think the best part of that Pokédex is the Gen 4 evolutions for all the Gen 1 guys, all the weirdos, right?
Yes.
Tangela's evolution, Magmar, Electivire. What made these games worse in my mind too is hands down the worst remakes we've ever gotten.
Oh yeah.
Not just the art style, it just wholeheartedly those remakes soured me on Gen 4 way more than I expected them to. So yeah, you're not going to find a disagreement here. I'm not a Gen 4 lover. And I like your point that it is the generation below us, it is their Pokemon. So it's like, oh, they're going to be ride or dying with the same way we do with Gen 1. So I get it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of like Gen 3. Like I said before, I really, really love Sapphire, and I thought Diamond and Pearl was like such a big downgrade in so many ways. Like the whole underground thing felt like one of the big focal points of that game. And it's like no one wants to
so tedious and unnecessary.
Wants to do that. Like at the time it was kind of cool, but you know, not anymore. I have one more supplemental hot take too that I feel like I need to throw in here because this has also been grinding my gears for years at this point. Fairy type should never have been introduced. It's way overpowered. I don't like the moves, and I particularly hate it because I'm a dragon guy. I like dragon type Pokemon. It's like my favorite. And the only reason Fairy was introduced really felt like because Game Freak, Pokemon Company, whoever felt like they needed to nerf dragon types a bit because they were too overpowered and they weren't weak enough to too many things. So they threw Fairy in. But all that did was Fairy type is now overpowered, I feel like. Fairy type is the one that's a little too cracked, and its two weaknesses are what? Steel and poison. Like that's way less common to me than ice and dragon is with dragon. Like, I don't know. Ever since they introduced fairy types, dragon types have not been as good, and it makes me so mad. I wish they could go back to Gen 6, what is it, X and Y, and just eliminate them completely. I'm totally fine with new types potentially being added and stuff like that, but I hate fairy type. Go away.
As a dragon stan, I get why you would have those feelings. I get it is overpowered, and that's why I love Tinkaton so much from a battle perspective, because like the steel fairy typing is ridiculous. What I will say though, from like a lore design perspective, I do think there needed to come a point in which like Clefairies and the Chanseys and all of these should not be the same type as like a Kangaskhan and you know what I mean, all these normal types. It just didn't make sense. So I get the introduction of fairy type. It also offers them another lane of like merchandising and marketing. But to your point, I can't disagree with the fact that it is overpowered, and it was released as a direct rebuttal to dragons being a little bit overpowered, but they kind of went too far in the other direction. and they just gave us, oh, we're gonna replace the overpowered type with a one that's even more overpowered. So
Well, it makes more
completely
sense
good thing.
lore wise to me. Like, if you are gonna have one type that is the most overpowered type, it makes sense to be dragon, because dragons are already
Agreed.
rare. They're the pseudo legendary types that you can't find them anywhere. Like, you're not finding dragon types, just scattered across every route through various Pokemon games. They're always super rare, hard to get, only in specific locations. They usually don't evolve until level 50 or 60 sometimes. Like, it takes a long time for them to become as powerful as they are. So if you get one on your team, like, you've put in like the work to get a powerful dragon type Pokemon, you then shouldn't get erased by, a Jigglypuff or something like that. It's crazy. I get why they did it, but I still hate it.
I totally understandable. I more so agree with your first take. I'm on the same wavelength. The second one, I'm a fairy type guy. I like fairy types. But yeah, I agree with you. And your point too to the lore, it does make sense that dragon type should be because they are the rarest, the most powerful, and the hardest to defeat. Next up, Logan and I are both big sports guys, so I thought it'd be a fun little thought experiment. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have tasked Logan with leading the design of their Portland, Oregon NFL expansion team. So all I asked him to do, I had 3 different components. Provide me with the following: what is the mascot logo Pokemon? What is the color scheme? And what does the stadium concession have a fun gimmick or design? If so, what is it? What I was thinking of, the Jacksonville Jaguars in real life have a swimming pool in the stadium. So if your team is based on like a water type, are you going to have some type of water features, anything like that? Or are you going to have a weird item? Are you going to have like slowpoke tails being served at the place that are obviously a real life food? So this was your assignment, Logan. Run me through what the Portland, Oregon NFL team based on Pokemon is looking like and everything else.
My first thought, I could not. This was just too easy. I was gonna do the Portland Psyducks, but I was like, it's too similar to Oregon Ducks. Like, they're not gonna have a pro team that's so similar to the college team. Like, they're not gonna have 2 Ducks. This is gonna be the Duck football state. Can't do that. So I started trying to think, like, what is Portland? Like, what's the kind of vibe of it? And not just Portland, but like Oregon as a whole. And it's usually, people talk about how the Northeast is gorgeous. There's a lot of forest and trees and stuff like that. And it's a very pretty part of the United States. So I landed with the mascot being a Trevenant.
Oh, cool.
For a giant tree. I wrote down here Trevenant because it resembles Forgan's vast forest and the greenery that they have there. But I also know that there's a Salem, Oregon, and I figured that would be fun. I know that's not Salem, Massachusetts, but I know Salem, Oregon has like they kind of lean into that like witchiness ties to it with the name. So I figured it would be fun to have like a ghost mascot as well, kind of tie into that. So
do you have a name? Are they the Portland what? Because I have an idea. You just sprung an idea, and I have an idea for what.
I just the Portland Trevenant. Yeah, we'll go with that.
I was thinking with your idea of it being obviously a ghost in a tree, the Portland Haunt would be a pretty cool name.
That would be not too bad. Yeah, that could have worked.
Seeing like the green too, the Portland green. It's tough because you don't want to call them like the trees, right? So it's like. Yeah, I do like the mascot idea though, and I do think it could be cool. Give me Stanford Cardinal vibes with them having a tree. Obviously a lot cooler with Trevenant.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of something that was like wholly different from everything else that's in the NFL right now. You don't want to just choose one that's like I said, Psyduck. That's just basically just an animal. So I was trying to choose something a little different that's not like anything else that's in the league. So there we go. Color scheme. I decided to go with green and black. I thought of green and purple, but then that would just be a bunch of Joker outfits running around down on the field. It looks like Batman villains playing football. So I figured green and black would probably work better. I like the green and black like Oregon jerseys when they wear those every now and then. The Jets like alternate jerseys that are green and black I think are also cool. Something along those lines I think would look kind of sleek.
When it being the Oregon team, just like with they do with the Oregon University, there's a good chance that we could get some pretty sick alternate unis for this team as well, since it's right there in the backyard.
Could, yeah. Let's get that lock down the Nike partnership for them, or I guess the NFL locks down partnerships league wide, don't they?
Yeah.
Darn, but yeah.
It is Nike though. Nike makes the uniforms now.
Okay, well maybe they could do it then.
So you have a tree as the mascot. Did you come up with an idea for the stadium concession gimmick?
The stadium, I said, have a sort of forest-like theme. Obviously, all these stadiums nowadays are, state of the art, retractable roofs and all that. I want this to be an outdoor stadium, though.
Hell yeah.
Similar to what they've got up there in Seattle. But let's have trees planted at different parts all over the stadium, because there's always, breaks within the bleachers or the I don't know. There's usually openings throughout the stadiums where you can kind of see the concourses and stuff like that. Let's plant some gigantic trees there. I mean, we wouldn't be able to plant them. They'd have to, bring in giant trees. I don't know exactly how this would work. They can figure it out. Get some engineers on it to figure out how we can import some big ol' oak trees here that you can see from the sky when you're flying over it. Yeah, I don't know. I figured something like that would be cool. I was trying to think of kind of try to base it off of how some of the like grass gyms in the Pokemon games look, with trees and greenery everywhere. So something along those lines. Maybe put some hedges up like it's Georgia or something like that.
Yeah, and get like maybe some like 3D model artists to hide some like Pokemon in the bushes that are like models you'd see like at a theme park or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Fun.
I thought of a concession idea for your Trevenant team. Giant chocolate-covered long stick pretzels. You can call them like Trevenant branches or something. I don't know. Something cute for kids. Just these giant chocolate-covered pretzel sticks with like something on them. I think it'd be pretty fun.
That'd work. I like the idea of Slowpoke tails, though. It doesn't fit in with the vibe of the team, I guess.
That's
other
Pokemon.
Than it's Pokemon, but that's a good idea. You should do Slowpoke tails. People would eat it up.
Yep. The funny thing too with the Psyduck being the mascot is that like Portland has the whole Keep Portland Weird thing, which I think fits. Also, Slowpoke would fit too. It'd be pretty funny. But Trevenant is weird in its own right. It's like spooky weird, but it's still weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always liked Trevenant. That's been one of my favorites from the X and Y generation as well. So figured why not? Let's go with that. I also like Trevenant's weird, like what Phantumps or like the
Phantump is cute.
It's the souls of dead children that got lost in the forest or something like that. Like the lore behind Trevenant and Phantump is like
awful,
crazy. So yeah, let's turn it into a mascot for our football team. Why not?
Have Phantump night where you have kids who come dressed as Phantump, get like a free drink at the concession or something. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is the only repeat question in the Elite Four we've had so far. And this is one everyone talks about their favorite Pokemon, who's cute, who's strong, who's cool. Logan, who is the ugliest starter Pokemon? You can pick any stage.
I really have hated the last. Yeah, these are 2 in a row. I've hated the last 2 water starters so much. If I was to choose one that I hate more than the other, I really do not like Quaxley. And what is it of all
the base?
Yeah, I don't even like the base.
Okay.
I will say I'm very I hate Quaquaval or whatever it is, the final form. That's what really puts me
Quaxacotl or whatever.
Yeah, that's what puts me over the edge to like loathe it. But I don't even like Quaxley just to begin with. I will say I dislike Sobble more as like base forms. Like if I'm just comparing Quaxley and Sobble, I dislike Sobble more so. Inteleon I don't like either. I think Inteleon is just weird and goofy looking.
Sobble has the most like incel coded evolutionary line, if I'm being honest.
Yes. I hate it. They have screwed up the water starters 2 generations in a row, and it really bothers me. They've got to redeem themselves. I'm usually a fire starter guy in every game. Like even with Gen 10 on the horizon, like I will choose the fire starter because that's always the one I choose.
Even with you being a Bulbasaur guy, interesting.
Yeah, I usually always choose the fire starter. The reason for that is because I feel like there's never many other fire options throughout the games, whereas there are
that's valid.
A lot of other grass options, it seems like. But yes, Sobble and Quaxley I have really disliked, and I dislike their whole lines. They look so terrible.
You're a Gen 1 guy, so specifically out of the 9 Gen 1 starter forms, who do you think is the ugliest? I have a pick I thought was hideous since day one of being a Pokemon fan, and I'm curious to see who you answer.
Charmeleon's just kind of boring, to be honest. Like, I don't hate it, but it's kind of the most boring of the bunch. I will say of like the final forms, I think Venusaur is the worst. So even though I like Bulbasaur a lot, I don't like Venusaur. I don't love where it ends up, even though it makes sense.
Ugly Toad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's valid. I think Charmeleon is easily the ugliest. I don't think any of them are super bad, but I think Charmeleon, especially for what it was and what it becomes, is ugly. It's just like a very awkward teenager. It's funny. For me, I think all original base starters are cute. I think the middle ones, Charmeleon's ugly, Wartortle's whatever. I think Ivysaur is actually a good design.
I
like Ivysaur's line a lot. And then out of the final three, yeah, obviously Blastoise and Charizard is cool as hell, and Venusaur's a little bit of an uggo, but he's a giant toad. Like, what do you expect? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the dichotomy between like him being this ugly toad creature and him having this giant floral thing on his back. I think it's really cool in terms of like a design choice. But yeah, he's a little bit of an uggo. The last question in our Elite Four: if someone asked you to pick the perfect game for them to start their Pokemon journey, what game would you choose and why? And on the episode with Max, and I've brought him up a lot, on his episode, I asked him, why is Soul Silver the best game in the series? And we had this whole conversation of, is it, back and forth, talking about all this stuff. And then he said, for any of your future guests, I think it'd be an interesting question to ask them, somebody comes up, they've never had an experience with Pokemon, what game would you choose for them? And we had this discussion like, it depends on what their age is, and if you know them and you know their interests, what would you start them with? Because like a little kid, the Let's Go games are a good choice, and so on and so forth. So without saying any much more, for you, if somebody came up to you, they're like, Logan, I have no experience with Pokemon, but it looks really fun. What should I start with? What would be your answer?
It's hard because I really do think the Kanto games are the best starting point. I think the flow of that game is excellent. The Pokédex is still one of the best. By far, I think it's very balanced. All the designs are great. I love the layout of the map and stuff like that. I think that is one of the best. I know it's a hard sell, though, to tell people, go back and, the most recent game we have that it's a standard Pokemon game, like you mentioned, Let's Go. I would not tell people to play the Let's Go games. Would be then... Fire Red and Leaf Green, and I know that's a
2004.
Yeah, that's a hard sell to get people to go back and play Game Boy Advance games nowadays. I still think that's the best starting point, though, and we're at the point where I'm trying to get my own stepson to go back to these old games because I know he will really like them. I actually just got him a 2DS for Christmas, and I am gonna let him borrow some of my older DS Pokemon games and play those now. The best overall is Gold and Silver, or Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Totally agree. Like you said, you talked about with Max. Those are the best for sure. So if you're only going to play one game, like if you came up to me and said, I'm only going to play one Pokemon game in my life, what is the game I should play? I would be like, okay, well, go play Soul Silver. Like that's the one to dive into. But if you're trying to jump into the series and see what it's all about, I still think Fire Red or Leaf Green or Red, Blue, Yellow, those are the best ones. I just wish, it's weird because we know we'll get more remakes here at some point, and I know the Kanto stuff is kind of played out, but I would like to see those games get remade again, to be honest. So I'd be fine with that.
Same. But not in the way that Diamond and Pearl were. Please, God.
Yeah, not in that way. Not in that way. Whatever remakes we get next should be a little bit higher quality than those, for sure.
Question for you real quick. Soul Silver, Heart Gold, do you believe are the best games in the series? What do you believe are the second best games in the series?
I'm going to not say, Fire Red and Leaf Green. It probably is those. Those would probably be the ones I would say next. I like all the expanded content that they added to with the islands and stuff like that. To say something other than those, though, I don't want to say the first three are so first three generations I'm so fond of and have so many fond memories of because they were the ones I played when I was a kid. So outside of those, which I have like major nostalgia glasses on, I think Black and
A lot of caveats, Logan.
It is. I think Black and White are totally fantastic. Like those are my favorites. I think those
Post Gen 3.
Yeah, post Gen 3, that's my favorite for sure. Like that's me trying to be a little bit more. I mean, everything's subjective. I don't want to say being a little bit more objective, but I think Black and White are supremely slept on, and I think those games have been punching bags for some reason over the years. I know people love them, but like, there's been more people make fun of the Pokemon and those decks is, with oh, this is an ice cream Pokemon and this Pokemon is just gears and stuff like that. It's like, okay, yeah, like there's some goofy designs in that decks, but there's also some of the best in Pokemon history as well in that decks, and I think it's excellent.
I hate when people do that because, like, if you remove nostalgia, there's a magnet in Gen 1. There's a orange carp. That's just a carp. Like, Gen 1 has some objectively, like, dumb designs, but because of nostalgia, we love them, right? And they were the first ones. I wholeheartedly believe that Black and White are the second best games in the series, and I think it's largely due to how bold the Pokemon Company was at the time to be like, hey, no, you have to play through this game with the new Pokemon. You don't get to go and use all the old Pokemon. Like, they forced everyone to do that. And like we talked about earlier in the show, that's how I play every new game. I kind of hold myself to that rule. So them implementing that, I thought was really fantastic. Also, we know it's the only other time they've added 150 new Pokemon, which I think was awesome too. I think before that, as much as I love Gens 2, 3, and 4, I mean, not 4 that much, but there was a little bit of reliance on nostalgia and bringing back your old pals and stuff, which is obviously part of catching them all in the Pokemon mantra, but kind of cutting that off and be like, no, these are new games. I think the story in Black and White and Black and White 2 are the best quote unquote narrative that Pokemon has had. Obviously, it's not reaching what other video games have done in the space, but in terms of a Pokemon game, I think the narrative is really strong there. I was just curious to hear what you had to say on that. Another bit of homework I had outside of building your own NFL team for Pokemon was a team building exercise. So basically what I had Logan do is he picked a fictional character, could be from video games, books, film, television, and we build a perfect Pokemon team. I pick 3, he picks 3 on the character he chose, and we focus on what fits the core of that character. So it's vibes, personality, world, lore, all of that stuff. It really comes down to what you want. Some examples, Braviary for Captain America, Weezing for Walter White, Zoroark for Atreus. In other episodes, there was other characters. For Logan specifically, he sent me Paul Atreides. If you're not familiar, Paul Atreides is the main character of the Dune film franchise and also the novels, which was a cool pick. I was interested what avenue we were going to go, and I like that you picked Paul Atreides because obviously he's one of the biggest current sci-fi characters. I think what the new movies have done in pop culture for Dune is really awesome. I think there was like a part in the 80s to like mid 90s where Dune was popular and popping off, and then early 2000s we got Lord of the Rings, and that kind of held a place in people's mind for a long time. Obviously it's fantasy, it's not sci-fi. And now with the recent films, I really think Denis Villeneuve has brought Dune into the main stage once again, which is really cool. Why did you pick Paul Atreides? Is Dune like something close to you? Do you really enjoy Dune as a franchise?
I really like the Dune movies. The reason I had chosen it is because when you asked me this question like last week, I had just recently rewatched Dune Part 2. I was like, let's just do Paul Atreides because I had just seen it again somewhat recently. So it was just kind of something that naturally popped into my brain. I do really love the movies. I have started the book. I think I started it like a year and a half ago. I got to the end of one of the like act breaks and stopped. I really enjoyed it. I need to get back to it. I really want to finish reading that and then read through Dune Messiah this year before Dune.
They're dense reads.
They are, but they're good.
Yeah, I read quite often, and I have yet to. I started it when the first Dune film came out because I was like, oh, this is cool. I knew about Dune, but I wasn't a fan. I started reading it, and then something came up, and then I moved from book to book, and then I haven't gone back to it, but I need to. But I do remember it being a very dense read in a good way, so I do need to hop back into it.
You and me both.
Let's get into our choices. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I can start. I mean, there's one very obvious one. So did we each choose 3? Did you choose 3 for yourself?
So I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I wrote down 6. I'm only going to choose 3.
Okay.
But I want to come with extras so that way I don't double up on you.
Okay.
It's up to you whether you only came with 3 or more, just so you don't double up. But yeah, I'll go off of you, and all we're going to do is obviously talk about the Pokemon and why we think it's a good choice for Polytrades. So you can go ahead.
I mean, I'll start with the most obvious one. I only wrote down 3 here for myself. But I think one of them is very obvious, and it's Orthworm. It's just a giant sandworm looking thing. Like, Polytrades would definitely have that on his team if he was a Pokemon trainer. Sandworms are all over Arrakis. So if they were Pokemon, he'd be capturing them. And Orthworm, I thought of Onyx as well, could fit in this vein. I almost went with Onyx, but I figured Orthworm from Scarlet and Violet was a little bit more on the nose. And I like that it's a steel type too, which is as far as team composition here with some of the other typings I'm trying to include, I felt like it worked a little bit better. So yeah, Orthworm.
My choice. What's the name? I haven't rewatched Dune in a minute. What's the name of the very big worm? Isn't there a different name for the very large worm?
Yes, I cannot remember its name off the top of my head. I can look it up here and get back to you. But there is.
It's fine.
Name.
It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, just for my explanation. So you just brought it up. I wrote down Orthworm, Onyx, Steelix, right, as my choices. Because looking through the whole entire Pokemon National Dex, those are the 3 that kind of stand out as the most adjacent to the sandworms. My thought process was I would want to choose Onyx to represent them as the normal sandworms, right? And then the one mega worm would be Steelix. It'd be the awe-inspiring, larger than life, intimidating version. So to me, it'd be really sick for Atreides to have an Onyx and for him to kind of in his hero's journey evolve that into Steelix. So that's why I chose Onyx over Orthworm. Also, Orthworm is kind of doofy looking, and to me, Paul Atreides is like super cool. So I think Onyx is a little doofy, but not as doofy as Orthworm. But once he evolves into Steelix, Steelix is a really cool Pokemon. So that's why I went with that line, the Onyx Steelix connection. And I'm glad you picked Orthworm so we didn't double up there either.
No, we were both thinking along the same lines for sure. I'm curious where we'll both go from here. So my second one, I chose is it Dedenne, the little tiny electric fairy
Pikachu
type
clone.
Yes.
Yep.
Because I wanted to choose one of the rodent Pokemon to go off of Polytrades named Moadib, which is named after the tiny desert mouse that lives on Arrakis, which is what he starts calling himself after. So I figured he would need a small mouse on his team to kind of represent that. And I thought just based solely on, I could have gone with Pikachu or any other of the Pokemon like that, but I thought Dedenne looked most like kind of the small little mouse that you see running around in Dune Part 2. That was the smallest of them all, and I figured that would be the best because it's actually a pretty good typing on Dedenne too, the electric fairy. It's kind of a unique little mishmash there that you don't see too often.
Your last choice, real quick, I'm going to ask, is it a fire type or a dark type? Is it either?
It is not. No, it is not.
Okay. So this isn't going to be my choice. I just want to mention this, and I'm going to get to my one that isn't going to double up with you, okay? So I went the similar route with Muad'Dib, and looking through the Pokédex, so the Muad'Dib is technically a kangaroo mouse. That's what the design is closest to. I originally wanted to go with Minccino as the pick. I was like, it doesn't look too much like a kangaroo mouse. And though it's not small, in terms of actual design and the size of the feet and everything, the closest Pokemon to a kangaroo mouse is Raichu. Okay. And also, like before, I think Dedenne is a little bit dorky looking, and I think Raichu is cool, but that's not going to be my choice. But we're in the similar path of what we were choosing. My choice, so for those who don't know, the symbol for House Atreides is a red hawk for Paul Atreides' house sigil that he comes from. And this kind of wrote itself. When you think about a red hawk Pokemon, there's only one that comes to mind. And boy, would it look dope as hell. Paul Atreides standing there on top of the desert dunes, lifts up his arm and this thing comes in and flies and lands on his arm, it's Talonflame.
Yeah.
I think it'd be super sick for Paul Atreides to have Talonflame. I could scope out things for him, search for people for whatever he needs. Obviously, it's a fire type. And the red hawk symbol, I think that'd be sick because, like it said, it ties into his house symbol. And yeah, other than that, I have not much else. Talonflame is one of my favorite Pokemon because I just think it's a cool design. And I've always thought hawks were some of the coolest types of birds in real life. And yeah, Firebird, Firehawk is just a cool idea. So Talonflame would be my second choice there for Paul Atreides.
That's a good one. I've always been a huge Talonflame fan as well. Like I mentioned before, I like a lot of the bird Pokemon in each generation. I feel like I always get one, and Talonflame was one of the ones I got in one of my most recent playthroughs. So that's a good choice. I like that one. And I like that we've been in the same wavelength, thinking about the same, thinking along the same lines here with the Moadib and stuff like that. I know that wasn't your selection, but I like that both popped into our heads. It's funny. Okay, so for my last one here, my third one, I needed a ground type, but I didn't want to just go straight ground because, like I mentioned, Earthworm is steel, so I knew I was going to need to get a actual ground type here, but I wanted to get one that represented kind of both sides of Paul Atreides because, yes, he's on Arrakis, which is this desert planet, but he comes from a very he comes from a planet where there's a lot of beaches and a lot of water, and he talks to the people about this. I think his homeworld's Caladan or whatever. So I was like, okay, I need to do a ground water combo here, a dual typing. And there's only so few of those within Pokemon that are ground and water dual type. I landed on Swampert, I think, being
Hell yeah.
the best one. It's a starter here, but it's of that dual typing was the one that I thought was coolest and really would pair well with kind of the two planets that he comes from and resides upon. I really feel like that dual typing fit him well rather than just choosing, one random ground type Pokemon instead. So yeah, one with Swampert.
I like that choice too because Paul Atreides, despite what he's able to accomplish, he's a very slight framed man. He's not a very large individual, right? And the idea of him throwing out a Swampert who's this larger than life, aquatic beast, I think is a really cool dynamic visually with just a small guy and this giant Pokemon. This is where we veered off. I was thinking of going something tied to his roots, but I kind of did that with the House Atreides symbol. I was thinking maybe going a steel water type because a lot of their architecture from his home planet that we see very early on in the Dune film is very militaristic metal. Steel type is kind of what spoke to me in the water. But I decided to go to a different path. There's one part of the Dune franchise that we need to make sure is included in this team. And it's a big part of Paul Atreides and his whole story. I'm going to try to be as spoiler free as possible, but the Bene Gesserit play a big role in his story as a kid and who he grows up to be. And to me, it's okay, if Paul Atreides grew up as a Pokemon trainer, there's no doubt his mother is going to she's going to give him a specific Pokemon he needs to train with, right, from a young age and be one of his partners. And to me, obviously, the Bene Gesserit is very magical and very much feminine energy. Despite this Pokemon...
Can I guess maybe where you're going beforehand?
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off. Are you going to go with Gothitelle?
No, that's an interesting choice. Once again, a little too ugly. I need cool. Paul Atreides needs to have cool Pokemon. This Pokemon can be male or female, but to me, it's always given feminine energy. I think any other of the types that are attached to this have always given me feminine energy. And to me, it's okay, what would be the symbolic Pokemon representing the Bene Gesserit? It has to be this. It's dark. It's mystical. Like I said, the feminine energy. Umbreon, I think, would be a Pokemon that would be attached to him.
That's yeah.
Yeah. And obviously all of the evolutions come in male and female. But to me, they've always been more feminine energy coded. And to me, it's that's when I think of the Bene Gesserit and Pokemon, for me, it's Umbreon. And I think his mom would be no, you need to train this. You need to have an attachment to the Bene Gesserit. So Umbreon is his 6th and final Pokemon.
That's a good one. I like that. I like
So I think our team is Orthworm. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't mean.
No, I was gonna say exactly that. I think we've landed on a strong lineup of 6 here.
We got Orthworm. We got Onyx, he's gonna evolve into Steelix. So we'll just say Steelix. We got Orthworm, Steelix. We got Dedenne, Talonflame, Swampert, and Umbreon. And the only, I guess what is Orthworm's typing? Is it Steel?
It's just straight Steel. Yeah.
So I guess we can keep him Onyx then. So we have at least a rock type. We have Steel and Rock, and then we have Electric, Fairy, Water, Ground, Flying, Fire, and then Dark. It's a pretty well-rounded team. I think it fits pretty well. I like doing this because one of a small activity I like to do in my spare time is I'll just type down a character and I'll quickly jot down like a couple of Pokemon I think would fit them, and then I just Google like what the internet thinks their teams would be, and I just like to compare of like I don't that's not a good pick. So I was like, oh, if I'm doing a Pokemon podcast, I want to have this activity with somebody else to see what they think about it, because there's various ways to attack it. You can go for, I think what we did is more so tied to the lore of Dune, tied to Paul Atreides, but there's other ways of like, oh, what does their personality feel like? Are they, someone could make a case for a Magikarp for Paul Atreides, right? Because he's this little nobody, but by the end of it, through his trials and tribulations, he becomes one of the most powerful individuals, Gyarados, right? I think then symbolically you can make a case for that. So I just think it's interesting to kind of figure out what fits with that character in the world of Pokemon.
I like it. It was fun. I think I chose a fun character to do this with, so I enjoyed it.
I like that we started on the same page and then we slowly veered in different directions. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Next up, Forced Evolution. If you could change anything about the Pokemon franchise, what would it be? And no, Logan, you can't say delete Gen 4 from existence.
I wouldn't say that. It's not my favorite, but I'm fine with it sticking around. There's a very obvious answer to this, which is, improve the visuals and the performance of the game, like bring Pokemon into the modern age. This is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The game should reflect that. But people have talked about that stuff so much ad nauseum over the past few years, and even though I agree with a lot of those sentiments, I wanted to think about something else that I would really want the series to do constantly moving forward with each new generation. And it's actually something that you mentioned earlier in the episode, which is that I want each new generation to only contain wholly new Pokemon. That is one of the reasons why Black and White is my favorite, is that it did not rely on the Pokemon from any of the previous generations. You had to totally invest yourself in that region's Pokemon and create a party with them and learn to enjoy them. And I think that's what makes those games so special and so enjoyable. I have really honestly disliked the recycling of old Pokemon with various forms that they have started to do since. To me, it really kicked off with like Sun and Moon with the different was it Alolan forms? With the different Alolan.
Yeah, the regional variants.
Yeah, with their regional variants of the Kanto types or Kanto Pokemon and stuff like that, predominantly Kanto Pokemon. I thought that was tacky and lame. I still don't like it. And this seems to be the thing that they are wanting to do more than ever. I have not enjoyed that. I thought it was kind of cool and novel at first with like X and Y to have, mega evolutions, and let's give certain older Pokemon another step in their evolutions that no one's ever seen. It's like, okay, that's cool. But once we started to do like, how about if Vulpix instead was ice type instead of a fire type? It's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Like, this is, I don't like this. I want each new generation to just be wholly new Pokemon designs. 100, 150 brand new Pokemon each generation. That would be extremely, extremely cool to me. I would love nothing more if they did that.
Yeah, at the very least, I would love if they just, and this goes to your point of having more original Pokemon every gen, the rule that we have and the thing that Black and White implemented is your reward for beating the game should be you can bring over your other Pokemon now. That's when you should be able to bring in your pals from Pokemon Home and all of that and get the old gens back in that game. and you should be forced, like you said, to learn the new Pokemon, because I do think we're at a point now where earlier in the show we talked about what are our favorite Pokemon from newer generations, and it is harder to grow an attachment to them because there's so much noise around them, whereas with the beginning generations, and obviously Gen 2 and 3 obviously had the previous gens in them as well, but I do think that's what made Pokemon Gen 1 special and why we fell in love with almost every version of Pokemon in the original decks, is because we had no other choice but to, right? And I do think that's why maybe the Gen 5 teasing and prodding is so apparent, because we were forced to learn all of those Pokemon, so people have use cases for making fun of the various different 150 new Pokemon there. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get to that point, because I think so much of what they do is relying on nostalgia. And for everyone like us, Logan, that starts the game and wants to use the new Pokemon only, so many of my friends and people I know start the game. How quickly can I get one of the Gen 1 starters? I want to get that guy. And then they play through the Gen 8 or 9 game with all Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon. I'm like, okay, then I don't know. What's the point of buying it then? Just go play the old, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm weird about that stuff. I'm probably on a hill there, but yeah, I always find that fascinating in a way that they jump into this new game and like, I'm just going to use all the old favorites, Pepperidge Farm remembers, that type
Well, I
of
know
thing.
they changed the mechanics
really
with each new generation too. They always try to mix up the gameplay somewhat, but like the biggest reasons that people are always excited for new generations is the new Pokemon and the new region. And if you're limiting the number of new Pokemon that are in the decks, then like that to me like hinders my excitement for that generation. So yeah, I feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth too, because I've said, I don't really remember as many of the, generation like 7, 8, and 9 Pokemon. Like they're not as memorable in my mind. But I feel like that is because of what you're saying. They've put so much attention on the different forms, and hey, did you know that you can now do this with Pikachu, and that there's also this type of Pokemon like this, and like they focus way more heavily on that sort of stuff than actually trying to emphasize the brand new Pokemon that you can catch. So
why in every generation, Logan? Why in every generation when they tease the battle gimmick, they always show Pikachu and Charizard using the battle gimmick? I don't care to see them using the new battle gimmick. I don't need to know what Charizard and Pikachu look like Gigantamaxing. What does this weird new sheep Pokemon do? Like, that's what always frustrates me too. And I am a tier 1 Charizard hater. Love his design. Cool Pokemon. I'll never disagree with that. But he is like the Starbucks of Pokemon. You know what I mean? He is the Ugg boots of Pokemon. It's so frustrating.
If you want to put them like front and center in a game like Pokemon Champions, which is coming out, like that makes like all the sense in the world. Go for it. But like even ZA was like most recently when they're like, we're going to release a DLC pack for this, and it's centered around Raichu. It's like, dude, what? Yeah. Like, I don't care about that. Like, why would I care about Raichu DLC in a game set in Lumio City? Like, I don't. Okay, I guess. So yeah.
Like, it's so frustrating. Like, Sylveon was sitting right there. Like, if you want to pick a popular Pokemon to do something with that's native to that region, it's just so frustrating. Anyways, that's Forced Evolution. Let's get to Return to Sender. This is your opportunity, Logan, to ask me anything about Pokemon, my relationship with it, whatever you'd like. You have the floor as the interviewer. What would you like to ask me?
I mean, I'm sure we could go back and forth for a long time here with plenty of questions here, but I know this is kind of relevant coming up here because I'll
give you a limit to 3 in case you have more. Let's just do 3 at max.
Well, I've only really got 1. So this kind of ties back in with what I talked about earlier with Fairy type and how they introduced that, and I felt like it screwed everything up. I've been thinking that it might be about time for them to introduce a new type. So I guess question 1 is, do you think that they should do that? And 2, what should this type being be? And do you have any thoughts on like what maybe needs nerfed, and like what other typings need nerfed? What does this new type need to be strong against, and what should it be weak against? Have you put a lot of thought into this?
No, this is a question I wish I had time to think about, a homework for. I don't want it to get to a point where there's too many typings, right? I do think maybe we're at a point where they can restructure some of the type weaknesses and strengths to kind of, we talked about this earlier with, Fairy being so strong and Dragon kind of being lessened by the introduction of the Fairy type. I do think maybe there's like a restructuring of the power levels of the types and maybe switch a couple of things up to where it's a little bit more evened out across the board. In terms of new typing, I don't really know where they could go. I'd have to take time to kind of think about it. I mean, Fairy to me was the one that was kind of needed because, like I said, there was all of the cutesy Pokemon that didn't really feel like they belonged in the same typing as normal. I guess one that you could argue, but it would be similar to like an electric steel type could necessarily fit this mold, but like a technology type or something for like a Rotom and a Porygon and stuff like that. That's more in the electrical world as opposed to like something maybe created and not naturally occurring Pokemon. We don't really have a typing for that, right? Because like Porygon was created in a lab, it's not naturally occurring. I mean, Ditto was technically created, but that's still organic material. I don't remember the Rotom Pokédex, if that's a man-made Pokemon or not, or if it's just like a spirit. I think it's a ghost type, right? So it might be a spirit that just haunts technology.
Yeah, I think it's something like that, yeah.
But that's one path I could see. I just don't know if there's enough Pokemon that already exist that could fit into that typing. Maybe the only thing I can think of is Porygon now that because we don't have any computer virus Pokemon. I think Rotom is the closest thing to that. I'm trying to think of anything else that's like machine based because it's like how close is it to Steel type? That's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is maybe like a technology type for a man-made Pokemon, right? The only thing that's coming to mind, really.
I've thought that they could maybe do like a light type. I don't know exactly how this would work, but they've got dark type. To me, that's always begged the introduction of a light type as well. But I don't know exactly. Like then it's kind of a situation where it's like, okay, well, like which one is strong against which? Because those two will naturally kind of be pitted against one another. Like is dark strong against light, or is light strong against dark? And then how do you nerf this? And it's like, yeah, like I don't have the whole. Again, I think if they introduced another type, I would probably screw things up further, and it would probably be similar to how I felt about the Fairy type being introduced. Like, oh my gosh, like this is too much now. You've introduced another type that's way too strong. So it'd probably just be another whole can of worms. But I have wondered if they will do it, and if that's going to be one of the big surprises for Gen 10. I feel like they've got to do something to shake things up here. So we'll see.
Off the top of my head, a couple of light types I think would make sense. Solrock would be a light type. That fits much more light type than Psychic, I think is what it is. I'm pretty sure Solrock is Psychic. Heliolisk could be light electric dual type.
I had thought about that too.
Yeah. I like the idea of light. Because at first I was like, well, isn't Fairy the opposite of dark in some ways? But no, Fairy is the opposite of Dragon, as we've learned.
Yes.
So yeah, light makes sense. Like I said, I'm just too worried of it getting too bloated with typings. Like there has to be a cutoff point, but light has valid reasons for existing, which I like your suggestion of that. Any other questions?
Hold on one second. Yeah, I mean, I guess what is your favorite? Let's just do, because you've already said you think Soul Silver is like a perfect Pokemon game. What's your favorite Pokemon spin-off, we'll say?
It's funny. In my episode with Max, he asked me this exact
Did
same
he?
question.
Interesting.
And my answer there was, I really think it would be Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, one of them. I've never played them. It's kind of like my one blind spot in the Pokemon franchise is the Mystery Dungeon games, and I kind of want to cross it off my list this year in 2026 at some point. I want to play one of them. And he suggested to me that I will probably really enjoy them because they're awesome games. In terms of the spin-offs, I think an underrated one that I wish they would make a new version of, a remake, it would take like $10 at most, is Pokemon Pinball. I don't know if you ever
Yes.
played Pokemon
Yeah, I was
Pinball.
gonna say the same thing.
I'm not even a big pinball guy. Like I'm not into like arcades or pinball machines like that. I know a lot of people have that as a hobby. I will say the video game Roku Island Express, which I mentioned in that episode as well when we talked about Pokemon Pinball, that game is like the closest I fell in love with pinball. It's a platformer where you pinball this little like cricket
Oh yeah, yeah.
bug guy around, and it's a really awesome, interesting way to design a platforming video game. Anyways, so I was thinking about this. There's Pokemon Snap, which I really enjoyed. I only played a couple hours of the new one, so I can't really give an opinion on it either way if I actually enjoyed it compared to the nostalgia of the old one. I've liked the Legends games. I've liked Arceus and I've liked ZA. I didn't like ZA as much because it didn't really commit to the whole ranking system. It kind of like gave up a third of the way through. Kind of skipped a bunch of levels. Kind of annoyed me. The city design could have been a lot better. Out of all of them, I would say if I'm not going solely based on nostalgia, I think Arceus to me is the best Pokemon spin-off game I've played. Like I said, I haven't played the Mystery Dungeon game, so I can't really give an opinion on that. The Stadium games were fun. I don't think they necessarily hold up all that well. I think they're a fun little gimmick. The Coliseum games were an interesting idea at the time. And then Pokemon Snap is fun for nostalgic reasons, but it's not a very good game either when you actually go back and play with an objective lens. So yeah, I'd probably say Pokemon Arceus out of all of them is my favorite spin-off. I might be missing something. Who knows? It might be Pocopia, that new weird survival game that's coming out this year.
Out soon.
I want to check it out. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but I do think it's interesting that they're branching out and trying new genres. And one that people mentioned that I thought was an awful game. It was like crack to kids in terms of commercials, but it was actually a pretty objectively bad game. Was Hey You Pikachu? Yeah. I wanted that game so bad, and then I got it, and I was like, I'm good. Yeah. Like 10 minutes in, I'm like, I don't want this anymore.
I think I remember renting that from Blockbuster and like being really into it, and then we bought it, and I don't know if I ever touched it once I owned it. So yes, very similar.
Yeah. So Pokemon Legends Arceus, I would say, is my favorite spin-off game. I just like going back in time, and I thought it was a neat idea, and I like the introduction of the battle mechanics and catching mechanics they introduced there. And I've always been a Scyther fan, and I like that he got a pre-evolution. I like that idea. I know you have some qualms with the regional forms, but I do like the idea of like, oh, this is his old evolutionary form, which was Cleavor, and then he has Caesar, which is kind of like his future form. But yeah, Arceus would probably be mine.
No, I really like that aspect of Arceus. I almost said this in the hot takes section, but I think that game is not great. I had some. It's not bad, but I wish it was better. I don't know.
There are some design choices that are pretty baffling, like with loading times and the way you kind of traverse the areas, and obviously all the performance stuff. But I've never been a big performance guy. Like obviously I don't want to play a game at 12 frames, but I'm not the guy begging for 60 frames. You know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously I want the game to run and not glitch and break and stuff. But yeah, I've never been the type that's like, I need my Pokemon game to be 60 frames. But to what I mentioned earlier with like Pokemon ZA, I do want the world design to not feel like it's painted on textures on all the buildings and stuff. Like I want them to go a little bit further there. I don't necessarily need it to run at 60 smooth. I would just like a little bit more artistic integrity with the world design.
Yeah, we're not in the PS2 era anymore, especially for, like I said, the biggest media franchise on the planet. You would think they'd be able to do a little bit more than what's been seen in some of those Pokemon games, but alas.
Is there anything else, or is that all you got for me today?
That's all I've got for you.
Okay, so that has been another episode of the very best, the Pokemon Interview Podcast. Shout out once again to my guest, Logan Moore, for joining me. Please, Logan, if you can let everyone know where they can find you and where you want them to go check out on the internet.
Yeah, so I'm currently writing over at comicbook.com. You can go check out my writing over there if you would like to keep up with video game stuff. Other than that, you mentioned it before as well, and Max was on the podcast, but we have a podcast called Chapter Select. It's a seasonal show where we dive into a specific franchise. Largely, we have done video games, but we've done a movie franchise as well. And those are all very evergreen over there. Those podcasts are still relevant now as much as they were 5 years ago, I think, when we started the show. So we've done a lot of different franchises: Paper Mario, God of War, Pokemon. We played through every Pokemon, mainline Pokemon game, and talked about them and what we liked and didn't like about them. So if you're planning to play through any of the games that we've played through on that podcast, and then you want to kind of stew on some of your thoughts and hear what other people thought about them, definitely encourage you to listen to our show as well.
The link to that podcast will be in the description on the YouTube version of this podcast. Logan, what, outside of the Pokemon series, obviously that's relevant to this show that you guys did, what's another game series that you guys have done on Chapter Select that you would pitch to people?
Yeah, we just wrapped up Metroid Prime. So if you are a Nintendo fan, and you are in the mood for some Metroid games, we've played through all of the Metroid Prime games most recently. Also in the Nintendo vein, we've played through all of the Paper Mario games. And probably the most relevant thing coming up here around this time is Resident Evil. I know Resident Evil Requiem is out this year. We've played through all of the mainline Resident Evil games. That was a really fun season of the show. That was probably my favorite one. So yeah, we've done up to, I think, 8 seasons at this point, and we have plans for a lot of others here in the future. Our next one is going to be centered around Castlevania, so you can look forward to that coming out at some point here in the future.
Awesome. I like to look at Chapter Select as like a resource. As we get older, obviously we're in our 30s now, it's harder to just hang out and converse with your friends about anything because we have so many responsibilities in our lives these days. So oftentimes, like we're doing right now, we use podcasts as an excuse to get together and talk. And I love Chapter Select because, like I said, I think people can use it as a resource because not everyone has a pseudo video game book club. So if you're going and playing a game, it's go check out Chapter Select. Have they played that game in that series? And like you said, your guys' conversation kind of offers a different perspective, and it can serve as an ongoing conversation with somebody if they don't have friends or people around them to talk about that video game. So like you said, that's why it's so evergreen, because it is like a resource for people playing through specific games of the series you guys have covered. Really cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's our favorite aspect of it too. We've found a lot of people have come back and found our older episodes over the years and have sent us messages about them and stuff, and have recommended new series that we should do moving forward. So, yeah, it's been great. I like creating an evergreen product. I miss doing the weekly gaming podcast as well, but there's something nice about creating content years ago that still feels just as relevant now in some ways. So.
For sure, yeah. It's not so much the daily intake, throw it away, as so much of content these days is. You got to be up to the minute on the news or else you're late.
True. Which
is kind of tough sometimes. Thank you again, Logan. And thank you everyone out there listening to The Very Best. Here's hoping you catch them all, or at the very least, work to become your very best. Goodbye.